Welcome, everyone, to DZone's virtual roundtable on generative AI, from prototypes to production, operational AI at scale. I'm Jesse, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. In our 2026 GenAI Trend Report, we surveyed software professionals to understand how teams are moving from experimentation to production and what's slowing down reliable, scalable adoption. The big headline is that usage is mainstream, but maturity is a little uneven. 79% of our respondents reported using LLMs, yet only 22% described their capabilities as enterprise integrated or transformational. Our panel today will bring those insights to life, focusing on the engineering work required to operationalize AI, LLM ops practices, agentic frameworks, scalable infrastructure like RAG and vector databases, and the governance and cost disciplines that keep production systems stable. I'm so excited to introduce our panel of experts with me here today to talk about all of these things and help you operationalize your AI. Julie, Director of Developer Experience at Apryse. Pablo, Global Vice President of Product Management at Denodo. Chris, here, Head of Product Engineering at Unstructured. Grant, Vice President of Product at Vertesia. We have Sunny, who's the Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft, and Tuhin, Professor and Area Chair of AI and Analytics at the Jagdish School of Management. Now, I want to go ahead and jump right in. Based on what we talked about before, only about 79% of the respondents are using LLMs, which is great, but that's split between 43% who are using pilots and 36% who are in production. But of those, only 22% says they're enterprise integrated or transformational, and 64% describe their maturity as still a pilot or not quite operational. So, Julie, from your perspective, I want you to get in here first. What actually separates pilot from production for Gen AI? And is it like reliability, governance? Like what is that distinction?
Yeah. So I think from the perspective at Apryse, there's kind of two ways to look at this. So we have internal, right, our tooling that we provide. So we have an SDK. So for us, AI that's production ready really needs to fit with what we've been offering our customers, which is something that can live entirely on premise and preserve that security and governance over their own information that they're used to. So for us, that production ready AI has got to continue to provide that sort of level of things. So we're not going to be able to call out to just anything, right? We have to make sure that that's secure and well documented locally. For our customers, though, and a lot of whom are getting into this AI game, then what they're realizing is that they have so much data and information in old documentation that they really need to be able to offer that end production RAG system, that vector database that really answers those questions that they have and that, that then they can provide to their end users. So for them, production ready means OCR, smart data extraction, like working through the data in these old documents and bringing it then usually to a human in the loop process to, again, make sure that they're checking all that boxes, that that data is reliable and solid, and then getting that out then into their vector databases, into their LLMs, so that that data that they're providing is really solid and is trusting, is a solid piece of information for everybody to review.
Got it.
To me, I totally agree with what Julie said, but I wanted to throw in another factor that I think separates pilots from production, which is the amount of end consumers that the solution reaches. Let me explain what I mean with that. When you have a pilot, you have normally a control set of people that is validating the solution and giving the thumbs up. In our case, we provide a semantic layer to then be used to provide data to the agents. So what we've observed in these situations is you work with a group of people, you create a semantic layer, things work great, the information there is solid, the people give the thumbs up. Then you open up to, let's say, 100, 1,000, 10,000 users, and you bring human ambiguity. This is every human has a set of assumptions and things that you consider that are obvious that are different from that initial pilot test group. And that causes, if you don't do the rollout to production very carefully, a lot of frustrations, because you have all these users that get there and it's like, I want this question to give me this answer. I logged in very excited here today, and turns out the system was wrong. And when you look at what's happening there, is how is it possible that we got the thumbs up in the pilot so enthusiastically, and now this person is frustrated on day one? And it's a lot of times because of the ambiguity, the assumptions that every individual brings to the table. So we learned that like a way to cope with this and to have those smooth rollouts into production is to be overly cautious on the what's clear for the LLM versus where you have doubts, and be maybe a little bit more abusive. Maybe that's not the best word, but abusive on the human in the loop. It's like if you need to bring a step into a conversation with multiple back and forths, that causes a smoother rollout to production to go from that smooth pilot into a final successful production rollout than if you just try to nail down that pilot with that initial group of humans that you use for testing and then just call it a day. So I'm not sure if everybody had similar experiences, but for us, we try initially to focus on that perfect semantics, and then we hit the wall of human ambiguity, and we had to change a little bit course on
Okay,
that path.
good. And Grant, you wanted to get in there. What you got?
Yeah, I think I can keep this one short and sweet. For us, it's really about the AI foundation. So it means, having a pre-established or a mature AI platform that's already vetted for moving from pilot to production, versus, the antithesis is what we call take a DIY AI approach, right? Because you're focused on just building bespoke AI infrastructure for every solution. And we believe that is the number one reason why everyone's struggling to get to production, is they're trying to put the foundation in place while they're actually trying to build the solution itself.
Got it. All right, Sunny.
So for us, production ready is basically we are way past the phase where this is not just about creating a cool POC or a demo, right? So we want to make it, productionize and make it also customer ready. So for us, the prompts are very important. Like earlier, people were treating this just like a note, but not a, first class artifacts for your product, and creating your Gen AI system as a tier 1 service, not just a feature anymore. So you have to make sure it has all the safety aspects in it. And if there is any thing that goes wrong, you need to also have a rollback mechanism to go back to the previous state without causing much disruption. So that is when I will call it as production ready system.
Okay, cool. Want to move on to our next one. The report also kind of frames adoption as a horizontal thing, right? Features showing up in, all kinds of places in the software, but integration is more of a vertical play requiring deliberate platform design. It specifically calls out shared inference gateways, standardized retrieval layers, and consistent evaluation pipelines as a key differentiator. And Tuhin, I want you to kind of chime in here first, but where have you seen fragmentation create real operational pain, like duplicated efforts, inconsistent guardrails, uneven observability, can't see things? Like, where are we going to get tripped up here?
Yeah, very rightly pointed out. Typically, what we are finding that organizations are currently using LLMs, using generative AIs, but then that has to be shifted. It is not about using just, it should work as a kind of operating layer. It should work as a kind of layer in the platform. And this will standardize the process, because currently all the variants in the last questions also have heard that the prompts are very critical and they also vary. So there is no standardization. So we have to, in that particular layer, we have to standardize, we have to monitor, we have to constantly evaluate, and thereby it becomes a part of the LLM ops.
Okay, cool. Chris, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, for us, I buy the standard tooling and the standard layer and the standard approach to it.
I don't think there's a standard pipeline in data. Every single use case, we have a different modification. If it's a legal use case, they have different data and structured data extraction requirements than I do from a healthcare, from a CPG. Like, we have the same tooling, the same pipelines, the same observability, but the delivery of that data, no two pipelines are the same for per use case. Interesting. All right. Grant, anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what Chris was just pointing out. Out there is that you need to have this cohesion, right, and control to support the unique use cases of every client and solution. So you can have a single platform as long as you have the flexibility to implement different types of solutions and different type of use cases and adapt to that, right? Again, without having to change the underpinning. I think that's the key.
Yeah, and I want to talk for just a second. We'll dig on standardization just a little bit with you all. But if you had to pick a platform decision to standardize on first, what would it be? Go for it, Chris. I'm biased, but like 8-year-old, 25-year-old software engineering principle, garbage in, garbage out. If we can't provide great data as the very first stop, your retrieval and your generation have got no chance. Like, super simple, get great data to these models as step one. Okay, perfect. Anybody else? What else?
Yeah, at Vertesia, we started with LLM execution, right, and a framework to just execute against any AI model or provider. So more beyond just a gateway, but an execution platform. But once you have that, to Chris's point, very, very quickly it becomes obvious that you need the content prep. You need to be able to prepare the data, because if you don't prepare that data, I completely agree, you get garbage in, garbage out of that execution. So that's a really fundamental and principal piece of the platform cohesion.
Okay. All right, Tuhin.
Okay, 3 things I would like to say for standardization. Number 1 is the prompt design part. That has to be standardized. Number 2, I would say the evaluation metrics. That has to be standardized. And thirdly, the model selection. If we standardize these 3 things, and then our LLM ops would be pretty well standardized.
Okay, awesome. Pablo, real quick.
Yeah, I think like it's important also to get like a standardized in the deployment of a project, the standardized meaning of the different data pieces. I've seen like in many cases where something as simple as like, you start an operational process that uses customer info and you have customer ID in 2 systems. The LLMs assume that is the same thing. Here is 1, 2, 3. Here is ABC, and you just get like a whole mess. So the meanings of things, especially as you get kind of into multi-system processes, become crucial, and it's something that it's a practice that's been there forever. Glossaries and like good dictionaries of data, but I think it's coming with a vengeance in the era of agentic AI.
Okay, Chris, and then I'm gonna move to a new topic. Like, that standardization allows us to measure everything. We've been lucky with Unstructured. We started open source. We were terrified of product market fit not happening. The open source crossed 65 million downloads. Case after case after case, we measure everything. And we have a line that I coin internally. I call it crossing the production line. And what we see is a user will cope with just about 13 wrong answers per 100 into a generative AI system. If it goes before that, or if you get your first 2 or 3 questions wrong, there's like an immediate discounting of, this thing's a piece of crap, I'm just going to switch to something else because the cost to switch is so low. So like meeting that bar of the production line and measuring everything with consistent evals, like Tuhin and Grant both mentioned, is key to us, and always trying to hit that target before we turn. Right. All right. Fantastic. So the next question is a lot of fun, right? I want to talk about what people are actually doing with AI. Use cases are kind of all over the place, right? They're distributed everywhere. Code generation, we had in the report around 56%. Content generation, 51%. Chatbots, we're at 49%. Process automation, 44%. And enterprise search and agentic workflows kind of sit in that mid-30 range. So which of these categories is kind of delivering the most reliable real-world value in production right now from your perspective? And then what do you think just looks good in a demo but struggles when you roll it out? Sonny, you got your hand up. You go first, and then I want to hear from Grant.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about how we are currently using in my team in Microsoft. So most of our use cases are currently in generating code generation part. So we have built a lot of co-pilots, where the data is bounded. So we give all the details about our repositories, all our documentation, design workflows, everything. And based on that, we are generating code. And also we created some co-pilots for code refactoring as well as code reviews. So this is where most of our work is done on creating the co-pilots. And apart from that, there is another use cases where most of the engineering teams today face is dealing with the live site, right? If you are on a cloud solution or any cloud related system, your on calls are pretty hard. So what we have done is we have created some DRI copilots which will analyze and it will predict the incidents much earlier before our runners does, or even if we get any customer related incident. So that's one area that we are currently exploring, and we are seeing a very good traction with using AI systems. And that's what I would like to share.
Okay, cool. Grant?
I think what we're most proud of at Vertesia is our ability to scale across use cases. So while we might, you have to start somewhere, right? There are good places to start and less, great places to start. I think, the key thing is that when we work with our clients, we want to start with the use case that's most instrumental and fundamental to the core business, right? So if you're a software company, maybe it's code gen. But if you're, totally different industry, it's not going to be about code gen at all. And when, but we start with what's core to the business, and then we build a roadmap generally based on value and effort to create the prioritization for a rollout, because we do see a lot of clients trying to make mistakes, like jumping to the automation or jumping to the search. So for example, you want to, for most of our clients, you want to start with things like AI enrichment and then go to search and then go to automation. Because if you don't have the enrichment, you're not going to have the data to drive the hybrid and the semantic search. And if you don't have the search, the agent's going to use that search and the search is bad, right? So I think there is a very pragmatic approach to rolling some of these things out. But it's, it shouldn't be focused on just one use case. It should be about scaling it.
All right. Love it. Chris, you got your hand up?
Yeah, same thing as Grant. We see it all over the place. My all-time favorite was a very old ice cream company who were ingesting 50 years of ice cream flavor research and seeing if they could generate new flavor ideas for ice cream. That was my absolute best. But then in the more regular cases, I see a lot of contract management in legal, healthcare is a big one, long form documentation, and also finance as well. There's tons in procurement, order management, things like that as well, where you're just overwhelmed with long form data. Ice cream's the best though by a mile.
Ice cream. Love it. Love it. Ice cream. All right, Tuhin, what you got?
Yeah, three things again I would like to say. Number one is that knowledge work automation. That means whatever get email, as simple as emails to the reports, it gets automated. That's the one very important critical use case we are working. The second one is about the decision intelligence layer for the CX. That's very important, right? We were developing lots of chunks of analytics models earlier, even AI models earlier, but then these decisions were still taken by the CXO layer. So how I can, make the decisions being taken, keeping not just the model, but of course, agentic AI comes, multiple agentic AI agents comes, look at the environment, the variables under the constraints, take the right decision. So that's the second thing. And the third one is the customer experience. Finally, everything we are doing to increase or improve the customer experience. So these are the three things or three layers where we are currently working.
Okay, very cool. All right, so the next one, Julie, I want to get you in there. Delivery models, right? Those also are a little, they kind of skew towards the practical internal employee tools, right? Which is 33%. Customer-facing apps were much lower at 26%, shared platforms at 16%, and kind of the autonomous multi-step things at scale was at 10%. So why do you think internal tools lead? Is it governance, data access, trust? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think part of it is back to that actually original point that I made is that control piece, right? When you are doing those experimentations and starting with pilots and you can keep it within your own environment, that's safer, right? You know, you're controlling all the pieces, you're controlling all the players, right? That begins that, like, you know, again, much like your QA, really good QA testing, right? You have someone who's going in to really try and break it, where otherwise you can instruct the people that you have about how to engage and how to interact, and then ease into that brute force QA environment where you're trying to break things. So I think having that internal control just makes it a lot easier to start approaching ideas and figuring out what you want to do.
Very cool. All right, Pablo, anything to add on either of these points, like what people are doing with GenAI?
I think it's a comfort zone. I think as Grant mentioned earlier, you start with things that bringing the content to then do the search. That search that needs to be enabled by the certain metadata or support to be meaningful, and then that enables other processes that are more agentic that leverage that search. So we are kind of like seeing those circles of comfort. I think that like business process automation, there is a lot of like things to do there in probably this year, next year. Alerts, reactive alerts to streams of things that also leverage that search to do things that are smarter than what we can do today. I think there is a lot of these areas that will see developing and going from those 10-15% into the 80% in the next couple of years. But as an onion, we need to start peeling those things, get that comfort zone, and once we are comfortable there, start opening up the use cases.
Okay. Very cool. Anyone else before I move on? All right, next topic will be pretty interesting, at least to me. I feel like we talk about observability almost every time we get together. Observability and AI are two things that we talk that go through everything. But as we look at LLM ops, it's kind of becoming this core thing, but observability may be lagging. So governance and controls are definitely rising for what we're seeing in the report, right? Human in the loop reviews, 62%. Great. Automated evaluation, 58%. These are kind of getting common. Prompt versioning and tool-level guardrails hovered around 50%, but runtime monitoring and drift detection lagged at 36%. It was interesting. And Grant, why don't you kick us off on this one? But
so to me, like that data is just very tells the story, and it's very obvious to me that it's like why these solutions aren't getting to production. Like you can't observe it; it's not ready for production. Period. Observability is fundamental. It's table stakes. It's not an afterthought. It needs to be there from the beginning. And that's kind of like back to my very first point. It's about a mature and established foundation. Like you shouldn't be trying to add observability right before you go into production, or think about it after the fact. It's step zero. So. That's how you get things into production.
Well, so dig into that a little bit with me, and the rest of y'all can chime in. Why? Why do you think that observability and this stuff's so low still?
I think it's low because when people are doing the DIY AI, you have to go piece by piece, and that's the last piece. And that's why, again, it has to be pre-established, pre-integrated before you can start doing these things at scale. In across different use cases. Yes.
So people are skipping. Got it.
Yes.
Not doing it's a discipline. Engineering's a discipline still, right? And you could tie it into the internal tools thing. I think Julie was saying too, right? It's an area of comfort. It's something that's quick. It's easy. It benefits me directly, but you kind of don't finish it, right? Engineers love to build great things, but we always don't like to finish our things. All right, Chris, get in there.
What you observe is brutal too. Imagine observing a stochastic model, right? We do continuous integration tests of these models all day long. And these are things I know. Sonnet 4.6 might perform better today than it did yesterday, and I don't know why. I know it performs better at nighttime than it does at 5 o'clock, at 3 o'clock in the day. And I know OpenAI degrades more in the middle of the day. We're observing them, and we're seeing different behaviors with the search. models. Like, when have you ever had that in software? You observe it, you see the output, you make the change. But sometimes you observe it, you see the output, you do absolutely nothing, and it goes back to how it was. It's a wild time for observability as well.
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, and Chris, we saw that the same Claude model running on Vertex AI versus Bedrock, they behave differently in terms of how they plan and they execute. So there are material differences in these things, and you only see them when you have the tools to truly observe them in production.
Well, I have tons of questions. Maybe it's a personality thing. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Tuhin, I know it's not really AI. Please don't yell at me. Sonny, you had your hand up first. Go for it.
Yeah. So to add to that point, right? So the rate at which the models are getting released. So whatever model that gets released today, they'll always compare with the previous model and claim that this is the best model. And a week later, there will be another model coming back, right? So the benchmarks are changing very fast. At the same time, what we do here in Microsoft is like we have different environments, like stage canaries before releasing to the production. So all the observability part as well as the monitoring, evaluation, everything is done in a multiple layered environment before we say, okay, let's go ahead and release to the production. Even though this are all internal tools right now, we are not developing anything for the customer yet. We're still in the process within my team. But this is what we generally follow. We want to make sure that we test with each model, and if there are any regressions or if there are any performance or evaluations are not correct, then we will try to roll it back and test it in multi-layered environment. That's what we are currently doing.
Okay. And Tuhin, did you want to still get in there?
Sure. Mostly the points are addressed. The question was that why observability was low. Traditionally, in the ML process or the AI models, what we have seen, the same inputs will give the similar kind of output. But then in the Gen AI context, the context itself changes. The temperature changes, the sample changes. So there are a lot of variabilities within the model itself, within the development or within the output creation itself. So naturally, then observability becomes a bit opaque over there.
I think it's interesting. And Julie, this one is interesting because you're on the developer experience side, right? And so I loved how we got at least into the human element of how developers behave as to why it's missing, not necessarily tooling gaps or unclear metrics, or it's how developers behave sometimes, especially when doing internal tools. Hello, my name's Jesse. I was a developer. And when I did internal tools, I did not follow the same process as stuff I shipped, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I love how we got into that. So for the people who are watching this, to kind of wrap this one up so we can get onto another question, like how do you reconcile this idea of like this assurance first, ship it, you don't want to end up with bottlenecks, but you still need observability. Like how do we move from where we are to putting observability where, Grant, you said it needed to be, right? Foundations. How do we get there? How do we get from where we are right now to there?
I can go. We do open telemetry for everything, and we are obscenely verbose and have a horrendous bill for our logging and telemetry provider. The only way we found to deal with it at the minute is be completely overly verbose and install measurement systems. So every 3 hours, we're running continuous integration that runs a full suite of metrics over our things, tells us if a model degraded, if a transform degraded. We hit that constantly. So at the minute, I feel by extreme, horrendous verbosity that's a pain in the ass to implement the other side as well.
I'm writing that down. Extreme, horrendous verbosity. That is a pain in the ass.
Great phrase.
It's interesting that here there is actually a monetary incentive to be good at observability because using LLMs is expensive. So that's, if you put it in the context of observability in the traditional world, which is always, as you guys said, like a nice to have, the last thing that developers think about, the last thing that you think during a pilot phase. Once you get into production, you hit that critical mass. This is expensive. How do you know where that expense goes? Observability. So I think we'll see a pivot here because it goes straight into your pocket, whereas traditionally it's been like, the governance guy is like, hey, I would like to know these things, and nobody pays attention to him. Here the money talks.
Super interesting. Okay. It was something that I wanted to kind of talk about because I think that's useful for the developers and developer adjacent humans that will be watching us as we talk about this stuff. I want to move on, talk a little bit about the infrastructure layer. Okay. So RAG and vector databases, right? We've talked about those already. RAG adoption, clear signal, almost 70%. We're at 69%, split between pilot and production. The leading use cases include chatbot accuracy, right? Research and data analysis, customer support, code search, all kind of tied to trust and reliability. Where does RAG most improve outcomes in your environment? Like, what are you seeing? Is it quality, doing audits, controllability, user trust? And what's kind of the hardest engineering trade-off that y'all are seeing? Anybody just jump in there.
Sure. I mean, the RAG is all about context, right? And context is about getting accurate results. So this is why we do RAG, and this is why we need it with LLMs, because without that, we don't have the contextual grounding to provide a business-specific result that's accurate and relevant to who's using that AI.
Okay. All right, Sonny, what you got?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have created this DRI copilots where to deal with the incident mitigation. So for us, we used RAG to give as much information as possible and provide them with relevant context and TSGs. TSGs are troubleshooting guides. So what happens is whenever any person is on call and they want to look at this particular incident, so this copilot will go ahead and look at all the previous 1-2 months of data, like 1-2 months of incidents and what kind of actions were actually taken by the on-calls and what kind of troubleshooting guides they have went through. And it determines everything and gives an entire report to you. So we are saving a lot of time here when it comes to incident mitigation. So that's one important, fundamental shift towards how we deal with on-calls has changed within my team.
Very cool. All right, Chris, you got your hand up.
Yeah, look, RAG's a broad sweeping name, isn't it? We think a lot in a minute about like agentic RAG, vectorless RAG, structured RAG, everything you can possibly think of. A lot of what we're working with at the minute is like a multi-shot attempt at retrieval. Like just having a chatbot that does one query into a vector database and attempts to hit the right chunks and then pass it through generation. We're finding like way better responses by having a multi-shot agentic approach on the query of the data store. So we'll store vectors, we'll store metadata around it, we'll store structured data extraction, and we'll expose the retrieval layer. Hey, you can search by named entities, by relations, by summaries, by topics. Have multiple attempts at the query and get back what you think and refine that search. Only when you've got that data should we shift into generation. Like that, we're seeing like earlier when I talked about the production line, it's way easier for us to get it past the production line if we give the retrieval and the generation multiple shots at the database.
All right, cool. Anybody else? Same question for vector databases. Like they're kind of everywhere now. I remember 20-some years ago, it was just relational. We went through all the different versions and now vector databases have found their place, which I think is cool. But are you treating like vector databases more as a shared service now? Right? Is anybody doing that? And if you're not, you go ahead,
It
Pablo.
kind of goes hand in hand with RAG. I mean, we need to bring that context. So I think at this point, like every AI process leverages RAG in one flavor or another. And all these fancy names that people have come up to with different flavors of it. But the process is the same. You need to bring the context derived from a semantic search. The semantic search needs to derive from a vector database. So it's becoming a commodity in the architecture. I think when we are designing systems, we don't think about it like as an extra piece any longer. It's just it needs to be there because that context is necessary for accuracy. You can just rely on an LLM alone.
All right. So another question. I want to move topics to the benefits. Like what are we getting out of this? And the benefits that we have in our report, faster time to market, 68%, reduced manual work, 62%, increased developer productivity, 61%. They may be similar, those two. Improved access to knowledge, which I thought was interesting, at 59%, and a customer experience at 51%. Which of these, and Julie, I'll start with you because I love the developer productivity angle and all that kind of stuff. But which of these is do you see most often? Which is kind of like we feel faster or we find something faster. Like, what are you seeing? And what are you hearing from developers where you are?
So, I think obviously there's a lot of talk about the use of the AI for coding, and I think there's a tendency to credit velocity as the only measure of success, and we're really trying to take a minute not to only do that, because faster in the wrong direction is not better. So we're actually right now taking a look at some better tooling to evaluate, if we had AI generated code, how much time did it take to go back and human in the loop, right? Review that to actually fix things that come up because that code was written so quickly and maybe not as well as it could have been or needed to be. So right now that's what we're kind of doing is stopping for a minute to go, wait a minute. We don't just need AI. Like, what do we need this for? And are we solving the right problem at the time?
That's a great question. And I love how you put that. That was awesome. All right, Sunny, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So apart from the code generation part, right? So imagine someone newly joining your team. So they have to do a lot of onboarding stuff. They have to understand the code, understand the design, everything, right? So with the help of AI now, onboarding to any bigger repository has become like, hardly a couple of days work. Earlier, it used to be a couple of months. Like imagine anybody sending a first PR after joining a team. It generally takes like at least 3 or 4 weeks to understand the entire system and send a new PR. But now with AI, it's like, becoming like a joke. Within a couple of days, people are able to jump on it. But again, there's always human in the loop aspect is there. Like we are not allowing it to check in everything, whatever you submit. There's always people looking at it, be it the AI or even the humans. They have to give the approval. But what I'm trying to tell you is like the importance of onboarding or entering into a completely new space with AI is actually helping the developer productivity.
Good. All right, Tuhin,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing something very interesting. Besides the generation part, be it the code or the different kinds of content, many a times we find that obviously LLMs are currently in a kind of developing, and is of course getting its intelligence improved day by day. So it is very important to get the content or the generation validated. So what we do currently is that while one AI system is generating, the other one is validating the content. So one talks to each other and ensures that there is a lot of backpropagation between the two systems, and one enriches or improves the other. So that's what another usage.
Chris, and then I'm going to ask our final question. And so, yeah, go ahead before we start our wrap up.
I love what Tuhin says. So we're like Julie's worst nightmare. We measure absolutely everything, and we know like 3 PRs puts us at 3 PRs a week puts an engineer at P90 for output. We are dangerous mode on. All the AI, let's go. Like full Silicon Valley dream. We're seeing like my top 15 engineers are probably doing 10, 20x what industry P90s for output. We deal with it the way Tuhin said. There's always a human review of the code. And there's 2 AI reviews. We have a positive review and an adversarial review. So we ask Claude, hey, review the code. It does a code review, writes the comments, adds it to our PR. And then we have an adversarial review from OpenAI. And we say, hey, Claude wrote this code and it hates you and it thinks you're dumb. Like, take it down, show us what's wrong with it. So we have like a code drops, and then we get a standard review from Claude. Then we have OpenAI trying to take down Claude, and then a human deals with whatever that is, and we move again. But like the 2-system thing that Jill mentioned is a lot of how we deal with helping that move quickly.
Okay. So
I
if
didn't
they
know
set
Claude
each
was so
other on,
judgy.
yeah,
right?
I was going to
It will
say,
if you ask it to be. We had the first rounds of it was terrible. It was just insulting the engineers. It's like, this is terrible. You're an idiot. You should go home. And it's like, calm it down a bit. Stop using my team. I'll still love them.
oh man, I'm going to get on an HR talk and ask if that's actually abuse or not. That's a really good question. I feel like we need to cover that. Neely, write that down for us. And plus I would love to see, like Julie and Chris in kind of a mashup to see, the humanistic side of this thing is a big deal, right? But we're running low on time, so we'll do this again. But the last question, right? As we look ahead, I always love to try to figure out where we think we're going to go. So over the next 12 months, what is something that those who are watching this can't ignore, right? As Gen AI just gets into everything, and you can pick anything, right? Platform cohesion, is it discipline, knowledge infrastructure, governance, cost controls? What is it that the people who are watching this really just should pay attention to, do not ignore? And Grant, why don't you go first, and then I'll just kind of loop right around.
Yeah. So, the first thing that comes right to mind for me is that, we're talking about Gen AI, but the thing that you can't ignore is agentic AI, right? Gen AI is the foundation of agentic AI. And agentic AI is really about how Gen AI is applied to building agents that can think and plan and use tools to take action, and actually do the work, right? Rather than just generate a response. So while Gen AI is the foundation and like the brain of that, agentic AI is like manifesting into the execution and the tools, in the hands to do the work.
Okay, it's a good one. All right, Sonny.
Yeah, so for me, it's like mostly like don't treat this as just a feature, but treat this like a production infrastructure where you need to have clear ownership, you need to have the quality controls, the monitoring, observability, and the rollback mechanism. So that defines where, teams still on the demos or creating POCs or moving to the production ready systems. That's what the deal breaker is.
All right, Chris, what do we not ignore?
Yeah, for us, it's building on what Grant said with agents, and from agents, identity. Who are they acting on? Whose identity they're using, and who gets fired when they do something bad.
I'd love to ask Julie her opinion next.
All right, I'm going to take a different approach. I'm going to say making sure that you're really asking why. Why are you building this? I think people are so quick to run and jump on the latest tool and get going because it's so much fun. Honestly, everybody developer love a new toy. But why? Why this new toy? And are you just making sure that the governance and thoughts for security are in place, that you're educating all of your users so everyone knows how to use it safely and smartly, and just making sure that you're coming up with plans that address the most things at once.
Awesome. That was great. All right, Tuhin?
Well, two things I would like to say. Number one is that it is just beyond the code generation or a content generation. It is the kind of universal cognitive copilot, I would say. So look at the different ways it can manifest. But having said that, the second thing is very important, which comes. It is the responsible and ethical ways of using. So that also has to be, it is not just, saying or articulating it. It is about developing the right policies, number one. Number two, again, with that, direct tech should be enforced so that the policies are really being implemented, even for the Gen AI, separately besides the AI, the Gen AI part. And that will definitely, give the right implementation, not that any implementation like deepfakes and all such kind of stuff.
Cool. All right, Pablo?
I think to a big degree we're still in the shiny new toy phase, and there's a lot to go from here. I think like an area where I think there's going to be a lot of change is and I think like Julie was kind of going a similar direction, is when people start to think of like what are real bottlenecks that I have in my infrastructure, in my process. So I'm talking broadly speaking, business process optimization, where you identify the bottlenecks and you can have AI help address those in a more automatic manner. I think that's where we're going to see true change in the workforce and how organizations operate. I think there's still going to be those layers of the onion. It will take a while to get there, but that's kind of what I have in the horizon as that optimization of processes at a broad level. That's where change is coming.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and cut this off so that we are not guilty of extreme horrendous verbosity for those who are watching this. You love how I did that, right? But I do want to thank you all. This is one of my favorite ones to do on AI. So thank you all for joining us here. Thank for everyone out there who's watching this. We hope that you got something out of our talks today from the experience of these wonderful experts that joined us. If you want to learn more, you can download the full publication that we've been talking about at DZone.com. Also, if you're not already a member, sign up. It's free. Gives you access to all of our trend reports, ref cards, and all of our virtual events that are just like this one. Thanks. We'll see you next time.